All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are looking at lesson 4.5, graphing linear equations in standard form. But what we're actually really doing is first learning how to find the x-intercept and y-intercept. This is one strategy on how to actually graph equations, and some of it is pretty basic on your division level, but you have to be able to separate it into its two ideas. So for our x-intercept, you are going to say y is going to be 0. Now, if the y is 0, the y value of your equation will essentially disappear, and then you'll be able to solve for x. So on the graph, it is the point where the line crosses the x-axis. And then conversely, the y-intercept, if you're going to solve for your y-intercept, then you're going to have to say that x is equal to 0. And when you graph it, that's the point where the line crosses the x-axis. Because when you actually plot your point on the y-axis, the x value is 0, and then the y value is maybe 1, 2, or 3. So the actual ordered pair, again, would start with 0, and then maybe 1, or 0, 2. Where when you are talking about the x-intercept and y equals 0, if you solve for, let's say, x equals 2, then your ordered pair would be 2, 0. And those would be essentially solutions of the equation. So let me give you a moment to finish writing this down. Again, we're just simply going to be breaking up our equation, which is in standard form. And you'll see what that looks like in just a moment. And we're going to separate it to solve for too many answers. You would then use those answers to make a sketch of your graph. All right, let's see what we got. So we got a nice, easy one. Everything is positive, so it'd be a lot easier to be able to solve for. On your quiz, I'm in the process of making it. It is going to be find the x-intercept and find the y-intercept. So for notes right now, we can just say find the intercepts, because we're learning how to find the x and y. So once you have the equation written down, I simply need you to break it up into two areas of the problem. Now, if you want to put a vertical line segment separating them, I've had students do that before. But again, I want you to solve for the x first and the y second. And the reason we do that, again, is because on your ordered pair, the x is essentially first. So let's solve for the x first. I'll show you a little mistake that some students make at the end when they do all of their solving, and I'm hoping that you do not make that mistake. All right, so if y is equal to 0, I'm going to take my equation, and the reason it's called standard form is because the x and y are on the same side. That's represented as what we call ax plus by is equal to c. So in other words, the a would be the 4, the b would be the 2, and the c would be the 16. So if it's structured like this, then it's called standard form. There's other forms that we'll learn about later. So, essential replacement or substitution, the y is 0, so now it's just 2 times 0. Now the great thing about using your zeros is, again, the y value essentially disappears because 2 times 0 is 0. So I can technically ignore that and say 4x is equal to 16. I could use my skills from chapter 1 to solve this equation, or you can kind of do it in your head. 4 times what value of x is equal to 16? And we know that that is going to be 4. So again, you can divide 4 on both sides, or 4 times 4 is 16. So the value of x is 4. Now, what I have, unfortunately, is some students who stop here, and I would like you to practice putting it into a correct ordered pair. The ordered pair should be 4, 0. And again, if I were to plug in those values to my original problem right up here, this would be a solution of the system because 4 times 4 is 16, plus 2 times 0 is 0, 16 plus 0 is 16. So 4, 0 is classified as two ways. It's a solution of the equation, and it's specifically the x-intercept. So we do the same thing on our y-intercept, except for this time my x is 0. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute my 0 for the x. Now the y one is actually the ones where students make the most mistakes, and that's usually when we're involving our negative signs. But since everything's positive, we are good to go, and we will say 2y is equal to 16. Now remember, you can do your division, you can do your mental multiplication, regardless of which way you do it, we should know that y is going to be equal to 8. Now, some students, when they put their ordered pair together for the y-intercept, unfortunately, they do it backwards. Remember, it's the x value first, y value second. So it would have to be x is the 0. Again, it's right up here. And then the y equals 8. So that would be 0, 8. Now, the students who don't actually write those two ordered pairs that I just have presented to you at the bottom of the work, for some reason, they decide to combine it into one ordered pair. So that is incorrect. Please do not write the one ordered pair of 4, 8. So in other words, they take this answer here, and try and combine it into one answer. Again, they're two separate answers because I'm finding the x-intercept and then I'm finding the y-intercept. So let's talk about what it would look like on our graph. So go ahead and make a brief sketch. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just go ahead and kind of estimate, make your x-axis and your y-axis. Now, since it said x is equal to 4, or 4, 0 for the actual point, that means on the x-axis, I would put my first point at the 4 or the 4, 0. It should be kind of scooted over just a little bit. And then the same thing for my y. On the y-axis, it says y equals 8, so, or 0, 8, because the x value is 0, the y value is 8. I put my first point, and it's kind of higher up. Second point. Now, the great thing about the intercepts is if you know how to do it, it helps you make your graph really quickly. Because, again, you only need 2 points to make this graph. So go ahead and take your straight edge, and you're going to go ahead and connect those points. Now, if you think about it in connection with our slope, we would say that it is going downhill. So therefore, it's a negative slope. And you could even do your rise over your run. So let's just practice that real quick. If you notice, you actually already have your right triangle. The right triangle is created from your y-axis and your x-axis. See that? So if I were to count my y, or my change in y, which is really my rise, that would be an 8. We already know it's negative because it's going downhill. And then my run is 4. So what would your slope be if your rise is 8 and your run is 4? And again, we already know it's going downhill, so it's going to be a negative slope. So are you thinking negative 2? And that would be correct, because again, 8 divided by 4 is 2. We already know it's negative, going downhill. Beautiful. Whenever we have to graph equations, we put the original problem on the line. So sometimes it looks different than this, but this again is called standard form. So go ahead and write that, essentially what we call on the line. It's just good labeling. Especially when we get to chapter 5 and when you're in high school. Chapter 5, we're going to be looking at 2 lines instead of 1 line. And you definitely want to do your correct labeling. All right, let's try another one. If you notice this time, there is a negative sign, so we are going to have to be a little bit more careful. Go ahead and write down your equation and then split it up into your 2 ideas, please. The x-intercept and then the y-intercept. When you're ready, we are going to go ahead and plug it in. So by plug it in, again, the proper terminology is called substitution. So for substitution, again, on the x-intercept, I already have it labeled there, the y has to be 0. So I go ahead and write it like this. When you're ready, you should remember, based off the previous problem, that 5 times 0 is just 0. So I now have this. Now I need to remember, what was your preferred method? Do you want to show your division, or do you want to try mental multiplication? We're trying to find our x value. If you wanted to do your division, you would show me divide both sides by -3. If you wanted to do your mental multiplication, you would have to say, okay, -3 multiplied by which value for x would give me a positive 15? Well, I know a negative times a negative is a positive, and 3 times 5 is 15. So regardless of which way, you should have x equals -5. Then we're going to go ahead and write it as a quick ordered pair. Remember, x goes first, so that's -5 goes first, y goes second, and my y was 0. Then, again, we do the similar work on the y-intercept. So if you notice, it's kind of like 2 mini problems instead of one longer problem. Again, the zeros make it really easy for us to solve. Unfortunately, I have students who have writing issues and their y kind of looks like an x. So please be careful on the quality of your writing. Sometimes I have students who accidentally do the y-intercept first, and therefore they write their answer incorrectly. And again, that's why I'm going to stress for you to do your x-intercept first. All right, -3 times 0. Again, anything multiplied by 0, we can just go ahead and get rid of that. So we now have 5y equals 15. And again, your two ways are show your division or do your mental multiplication. So my y value should be 3. Again, I make my ordered pair. The x goes first, y goes second. So this time it should be 0, 3, not 3, 0. And then remember, some students unfortunately put both answers together to try and make one answer, and that's incorrect. Those are my two intercepts. That's what I need. So what we're going to do now is, again, going to make a brief sketch. So go ahead and make your x-axis and y-axis. Again, you don't need all the points there. You don't need all the numbers, I mean. Refreshing water. And when you're ready, remember the x-axis, or sorry, the x-intercept is -5. So on the x-axis, you find -5, or -5, 0 for the specific point. For my y-axis, I have 3, 0, 3. So my first point, again, on the x-axis is at the -5. My y-axis is that +3. And then you make your line. And then you label your line. And everybody's happy. But if we wanted to, again, we could talk about our slope really quick, because again, the slope idea will be on your next quiz. Again, we've already practiced from our graph. So you've already got your 2 points. So again, all you have to do is your rise over run. So my rise is 3. My run is 5. Now we know it's going uphill. So it's a positive slope. So again, that is up 1 box, 2 box, 3 box. So you should make your right triangle and then right 5. So 3 over 5, or positive 3/5. Again, we label it. Everything's good. All right, we're going to do one more example just like that, and then we'll talk about essentially kind of like the backwards level of the problem. All right, so this is the one that I was kind of mentioning about the negative sign having to be careful, and that's specifically when the y here is negative. So I interpret this as -4y. So you got to be extra careful there. So we still split it up. So let me give you a moment to catch up by splitting it up. When you're ready, again, starting with the x first, always the x first. Again, we want the x-intercept first. When you're ready, put the 0 for the y. -4 multiplied by 0, don't really have to worry about that. So I have 2x is equal to 8. Sometimes we would have a -8, so we have to be a little bit more careful with the negative signs. But this one, again, 2 positive numbers, nice and neat. You can do your division, mental multiplication. X is 4. So we write our ordered pair answer as 4, 0. All right, now on the y-intercept, again, please observe here. When I put the x value as 0, that disappears. Remember, the 2 times 0 is just 0. That disappears. However, this negative sign right here on the 4y, that does not disappear. So when I write it, I have to have it as negative 4y equals 8. Don't forget about this negative sign. That's important there. So when you divide or mental multiplication, you got to use that negative sign correctly again. And we kind of mentioned that on the previous one. But it's that specific one. It's the one with the y. That's the one they forget. Because they say, oh, it's a minus sign. Yeah, and minus sign, negative sign are kind of interchangeable in 8th grade. So regardless, your y should be negative 2. You make your ordered pair. Zero, negative 2. All right, so we're going to go ahead and make a brief graph. And then we'll talk about the kind of backwards problem. All right, so give you a moment to make just your kind of generic x-axis, y-axis. Don't worry about the numbers again. Don't worry about the boxes. You're just going to kind of estimate where you're going to put your point. On your homework, you are given an actual coordinate plane, so you can make your points very accurate. So looking back, we have x is equal to 4, 4, 0 for the ordered pair, and y is negative 2. Let's see, x is 4, 4, 0 is the ordered pair. Y is negative 2, 0, negative 2. Line is going uphill. Our slope would be positive. Now, if I wanted to find my positive slope again, it's my right triangle. So again, it's like this. So the rise is 2, run is 4. Rise is 2, run is 4. So 2 over 4, that is really 1/2. So slope would be 1/2. Don't forget your label, which is really the original problem, your standard form equation. Now, if you notice my graph's a little bit more specific, essentially the expectations for your homework, I have my 2 points. I have my line, what I call edge to edge, meaning it's all the way over here and over here, edge to edge, meaning don't stop too short. And that's going to be very helpful for Chapter 5. So if I can train you correctly now, that'll help you in Chapter 5. And then again, we have the arrows and the equation. So the 2 dots, line, edge to edge, arrows, and equation. That would be classified as a good graph. All right, last one is when you're presented with a graph. Now, this one should be kind of duh or basic for you when you are doing it on your quiz. I'm going to give you a graph, and I simply need you to identify the intercepts. But remember, the little confusion that I was explaining about some students is they kind of forget how to write the final answer. So let's discuss that. So you can just observe this one, write a little note, essentially put your points at the intercept. So I'm not worried about these boxes over here or even in the middle or over here. I'm looking specifically for the x-axis and y-axis again, because it's called the x-intercept, located right here. The x is negative 4, so my x-intercept is negative 4, 0. My y-axis, point is at negative 3. Y is negative 3, so I have 0, negative 3. Those two ideas right there are classified as my x-intercept and y-intercept. Do not try to combine your two answers. Again, I need specific or separate answers here. This is what I would be looking for. Tell me the x-intercept first, y-intercept second. Excellent. All right, so you're going to use these skills to help you out on your assignment. Be awesome.